To the poetry despot, the muse knows my number, and I am a poor farmer. Anyone who creates knows once you commit to the creative process, it either becomes a way of life or you move on. Poetry is that process for me, continuous and ever-evolving, absorbing, never-ending, and sometimes obsessive. I would be much more successful at almost everything if it were not for poetry, and I would be unsuccessful at just about everything if not for poetry too. Poetry makes me who I am and precludes me from getting these necessary things in my life done. I'm supposed to get done in a timely fashion because most times the only voice I hear is the muse. I have lots of things around the house that may never get finished, may get finished someday, and will be left for the ages for all one or another reason, because I would rather be in a poetic state than anywhere else. The state of poetry is a state of grace for me. I go there to maintain my peace, to find solace and meaning, and in this otherwise intrusive and abusive world. Some seeds do not grow in the backyard flower pot. They sprout in your mind. So this book is a memoir, Haibas. Some of you may know that I lost a close friend over the last year. Oh, I want to read this one for you. Poems about Sean are because he died, are kind of serious. So I'm going to read these two and get them out of the way. All right? What friends do. After months and months of sitting with my friend Sean while reading to him and trying to read his lips, they finally hooked up an apparatus that attached to his air tube and allowed him limited speech. Immediately I grabbed a pen and paper and sat poised, ready, willing, and able to diligently ascribe all the important things that he wanted the world to know. He opened his mouth, I put pen to paper, and he said, I want a foot-long sub from Subway, steak and cheese with cheese and herb on a bun with a large Diet Mountain Dew. What? I said, I waited all this time to hear your voice, and you're sending me out for food? Hey, we all have our priorities, he snickered. And that was when he gave me his patented cordwainer T-bird smirk. Sean was on a feeding tube and knew I couldn't give it to him. He was pulling my leg, always the prankster. If we had known then that you would be gone today, would we act the same? As I held his hand, I helped him to cross over. Now he rests in peace. Purgatory. I'm not going to read Purgatory. It's really, really depressing. I'm going to read this. This is going to be a chapter from my novel. It's actually something that happened between Sean and I, and Sean killed me off in a number of his books. So I figured it was only fitting that I killed him off in mine. Okay. Sunday, September 2nd, 1917, Leonard Hospital, Troy, New York. Charles Wing walked into the hospital ward. It smelled rancid. How many bodies, all packed in, cot after cot. The nurse led him to William. He was next to the window. It was a slight breeze. He was fortunate. Get me out of here, mouthed William. No sound came from his mouth, not even a squeak. His vocal cords hadn't recovered from the accident, and he could only see partially with his left eye. I can't read your lips. What did you say? If you can't help me, leave me alone. I can't help it. I can't read your lips. It's all my fault. Bullshit. It's my fault, and I know it. Get me out of here. I can't. Why not? I can't. You know I can't. What do you want from me? Get better. I can't. When you get better, I'll bring you home. I don't want to. You telling me you want to die? Yes. Is that what you were doing that morning when you crossed the trolley tracks? Yes. William looked into his brother's eyes and mouthed slowly and deliberately, "Kill me." What? I can't do that. What makes you think I could? Because I asked you to. Get better, damn it. Why? For me. Oh, sure, it's all about you. What? You know I can't do that. They'd send me back to jail and I would never survive. I have a wife and kids now. I've had enough, William pleaded. Charles stood up and started towards the door. Where are you going? Don't leave me here. Get better, damn it. Charles wanted to cry. He began to breathe heavily and irregular, sucking in and out his mouth. He stumbled to the already open door for air, pushed it all the way up He stumbled to the already open window for air, pushed it up all the way as far as it could go, and looked down at the street. An American Star bicycle bounced along the cobblestone. The gold trim on its 60-inch polished and gilded rear wheel glinted in the sun. He breathed slowly. He steeled himself and turned towards William. William was begging him now with his eyes. Charles looked on them and looked slowly and intentionally towards the window, then back at William. William understood. Maud was sitting, waiting for him in the hallway. Charles hugged her, and together they turned towards the stairwell. Just as they stepped onto the bluestone sidewalk, they heard a scream. People began running past them. Charles began to cry. Maud didn't know what to say. She held his hand tightly, and they walked back to the car in silence. Charles drove out of Troy, heading south towards Albany. The long ride back to Cortland, in Westchester County, would take them most of the day and the early evening. If they were lucky, they would make it home an hour after dark, just in time to get some sleep before he had to open up the garage again in the morning. They were all gone now. No one left but him. No one left to tie him to his past. He was free from everyone but himself. He liked it. I read it to him. This one's for you. Old school. My father, before DNA was a thing, used to say, "Your mother is 50% Irish and 50% German. Your father is 50% German and 50% Irish. That makes you 100% Irish and 100% German." To which I responded, "I don't think that's how the new math works, Dad." New math? New math? What's wrong with the old math? It was good enough for your father and it's good enough for me. Why would you be needing new math for? Because someday, God willing, I'll have grandchildren too. And I don't think they'll understand your trigonometry. Trigonometry? Whatever do you mean by that? I mean, like, when you tell me something tricky and I can't wrap my mind around it and I just give up because it makes no sense. Oh, well, you needn't worry about that. You'll never fully understand because you're, I know, 100% Irish and 100% German. No! Because by then your new math will be old math. My father is here. Sometimes I forget that I have become him. Anyway, one poem from here. This is a 10 poem piece. It's I'm working on the drawings for it. It's a Western. I'm just going to read the first one because it would get long if I had to read the whole thing. And I can't read them out of order because it wouldn't make context sense. Trouble on the trail. Pathos Phil had been held up here all night, sleepless and chilled to the bone. He looked like a man who knows the ending to a joke somebody else is telling. He had a rail of a body with arms like strings. He was a lonesome cowpoke on a lonesome trail. He was a tall, steel-nerved hombre He didn't know the cold, clammy touch of fear. He had a long-jawed, pockmarked face with one blue eye, one mean blue eye. He pulled his black, lopsided, shapeless Stetson down over his other eye. He slipped out back because they was covering the front. He swung out of sight at the top of a dune and vanished into a hollow like a boat at sea. He pulled out a polka dot bandana and wiped his beaded brow. He grabbed some red eye from his saddlebags and took a snort. His badge weighed heavy upon his chest. He wasn't going to let the mysterious rider get away. You'll have to read the book. One of the things I've been doing with this novel, set in 1888, is reading a lot of newspaper articles, tattletale journalism in the 1800s. So I started writing poetry based on them. And I've gotten to the point, I think, where I'm writing these sonnets. There's bits and pieces of reality in here, but I've done it so long that I can fake the reality. And if I do it good enough, you can't tell the real from the fake. So I'll just read a few of these. They always have, the headline because somebody in the town, sent this in through the mail by deadline. Tattletale. It's called tattletale journalism for a reason. So this one is Clarksville. Fruit of all kinds is plenty, that it scarcely pays for the gathering. If a doorknob opens by itself, then maybe it's haunted. When your train of thought leaves without you, start walking. Burglars are at work all around us. Our citizens should oil their rusty revolvers. If you don't know where you're from, you're not from anywhere. The prospects of a good ice crop in July are slim. Poetry is dangerous because it causes you to remember. Dunbar Hollow. Esquire Filkins is feeling poorly. He suffers from a union of the senses. Special police have been sworn to serve through the hop-picking season. The border house is doing a lively business. Esquire Filkins is improving. A man who has God in his body can cure all ills. Many of our young people have been hop-picking. Esquire Filkins has called for his lawyer. He has been writing the same poem for years. A 2-year-old heifer has strayed, reward offered. There will be little rest until after hop picking. Esquire Filkins is dead. Not much going on this week. Nowersville. We sold our spring poem to the Gilman Station Scribe for 50 cents. This was a more profitable sale as it had already been published. I wouldn't be telling you this, but that 50-cent piece was plugged. Quite a sensation was caused at the schoolhouse. A mad dog ran into the classroom and was shot. Shorty visited the lake and blistered his hands, but nary a fish. The little mite of a boy should have used a hickory stick with a pin hook. The fence in front of the church has been taken away. The iron walkway is nearly completed, the length of Glass Street. The Voorheesville band looks fine in their uniforms. We can't wait to hear their tin horns on New Year's Eve. We admit that we were deceived by this poem. We ought to have known that no good thing could originate in Bengal. So we traded it for a dog and shot the dog. Bengal was what they called Gilman Center because it was the den of iniquity. Hunter's Land. We opened a can of paint and it was as hard as an old maid's heart. Everyone who enjoys the country fresh air wants to bottle it. Let's hope they don't. We might run out of it ourselves. After the fall, striking on your hands and knees, what we did on our backs is anyone's guess. We've heard the phrase, the almighty dollar, so often we decided to look it up and find out where it went. Hip hop hooray, there is water in the well. The pump broke from the surprise of it. One day we had a pump and no water. Next day, water and no pump. Where did the phrase sailing under false colors originate? We have been falsely accused of it several times. How long has this hamlet been dead? Can't be long, as you're the only buzzard that I've seen. Seriously, these lines were gleaned from, mostly as is, and I just twisted them a little bit. I've got a baseball one, but I think I'm going to move on.
What is it?
It's Elvis and
What is
Pittsburgh.
it?
Elvis juice.
And a Pittsburgh koozie. It's very
So this book is called Elvis Stokes the Crucible with Words. And honest to God, I was like in the middle of the night, I realized this is actually based on reality. I knew this kid. I ran a headliner in high school. It was called a Ludlow. And you put type into a compositor stick, and you put it into the Ludlow, and the letters were reversed, and it kicked out a headline, and you blocked them together, and you made everything from wedding invitations to posters. The genius of the Ludlow was, at the end of the day, or the next day, you broke up the block, and you took all the lead, and you threw it back in the crucible, and melted it down, and started over again. And I've always had this image in my mind. It was a Bosse's thing, and Elvis was actually named Lehman Brown, and he was this guy that it was his job to put all the slugs back in the pot and melt them down, and he lived with his, so it's real, and it came out of like subconscious. These poems were written beginning and post pandemic, and retiring one poem every day for whatever. So the total will be 101 spontaneous poems, and I'm going to read I think at least the 2 poems with Elvis in it. Elvis is the driver on our bus. He's good operatively. He ferries us to and from Outpost Heroes. We wear headphones, listen to AC/DC at half speed on our Walkmans. Even our batteries are dying. I use duct tape to hold the cassette in. Elvis is impressed. Offers me his lunchbox, but I say, no, I've already had my poke salad for today. Elvis gets all shook up. I tell him, you ain't nothing but a churgus, whining all the time. He puts us out. Bill Haley's a cab, and Elvis drives away. The bus shakes, rattles, rolls. Gehenna comes up. I'm a product of the Irish Catholic school. Gehenna comes up in my poems all the time. Sorry. It means hell. It's just, Gehenna is rocking, and I'm rolling over. There's nowhere else to go, so I build up. Falstaff teeters on the brink of warbling. They accepted the poem, but reheated my bio, he says. This is not the second time for everything, because iconography is his first language. An adjective gets stuck in your throat. You begin coughing up nouns. Elvis stokes the crucible with words. It's going to be a long night. I wake up in the middle of the night and these things come out, and I write them down. So, all the wee folk of my youth grew up to become the angels of my now. They no longer scare me, and we speak lively when we've the chance. Often I listen to their counsel and regret, I'm sure, when I don't. I kept them rather busy as a child, rescuing me from the fires of Gehenna. Whereas once we were mischievous and bold, Now they are my counselors, and we are old. Remember that time I hear one say, yes, and that other time. How did we ever survive? I cheek. In dreams, in dreams, in dreams, they reply. I think that's pretty close to where I want to end. I've got one last poem marked here, and I'll try that. This is going to be poem number 98. I have a shirt-tailed relative I'll never meet, hidden behind our Irish lace curtains. His second wife left him, moved away home, took the 2 children and the cat. So get a cat, I suggested. Better yet, get 2, he replied. But I have a lot of antiques, he said. And so he lives in that big house, alone and lonely, and I now have 2 cats.